Most people think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches you how to fight, but they're wrong. The most important thing that BJJ teaches you is how to stay calm when everything goes bad. And that one skill can help save a cop's life or a civilian's in seconds. I spent 13 years as a police officer, and during that time, I had numerous encounters with people who were either drunk or high on drugs or just angry and wanting to fight with us or just not listening to our commands, and you had to restrain them. On top of that, I spent 10 years training with some of the highest level operators in the country, whether they were Navy SEAL Team 6 guys, Delta guys, Army Rangers, you name it. So I got a lot of experience hands-on with some of these people. And most importantly, I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and today I'm a brown belt. And I've learned a lot in my Jiu-Jitsu journey, and I'm going to share some of what the most important things I've learned with you today. When I first started Jiu-Jitsu, I was your typical white belt. Now, mind you, I started Jiu-Jitsu after my law enforcement career. During my time as a cop, yeah, I had some friends that did jiu-jitsu and I rolled around with them a little bit, but it was never really true training. And my time as a police officer, when I had these interactions with people, I was doing essentially everything wrong. And the only thing that saved me was, one, my strength, and two, a little bit of the wrestling skills I had wrestling growing up as a kid. But when I started jiu-jitsu, I realized that one of the things I had from being a police officer was a little bit of that calm during the storm. However, most people I saw who came onto the mats as a white belt, when they got into a compromising position, meaning someone took their back and now was choking them, or someone had mount and was trying to put on a submission, they were freaking out. They would freak out. They would get that tunnel vision and they would just lose their mind. And as most people who do jiu-jitsu know, the white belt freak out, they just spaz out. And this was something that I was told by other higher belts on the mat that I wasn't doing. And I had a little bit of insight from some of the people I worked with who were higher level belts and gave me some insights here and there. So I fortunately was not that spaz out white belt when I got into a bad position. But I realized that's one of the key things that helps you in jiu-jitsu. And actually, outside of the mats even, it's something extraordinary for your everyday life. Learning how to control your emotions and think strategically and be calculated when things are seemingly going horribly wrong. Someone is literally behind you choking you. Well, it doesn't get much worse than that. So that is something that I learned was so critical in just life in general and just a life skill. And as I advanced in jiu-jitsu, of course, you start training with better people and higher level partners, and you get put into some really bad spots. And I always knew that I had to go back to that initial training of maintaining my composure. Don't freak out, work through the problem, just calm during the storm, calm through the chaos, and that's what gets you through. When you freak out, you forget about your training, you forget about what you actually know, and you just resort to trying to use strength and, muscle your way out of it. And that is exactly what you don't want to do. You don't want to do that on the mats. You don't want to do that on the street if you're on patrol. And you surely don't want to do that with any significant problem that you're facing in your life. One of the things you'll realize early on is when you freak out during these compromised situations, you expend a lot of energy. And that energy is what you need to conserve to make it through the fight. That's why you see new white belts that come onto the mat and they get into these positions and they are gassed out within 30 seconds. They freak out and next thing you know, they have no energy left. There's so many times when I roll with new white belts that they just freak out, they gas themselves out, and they just tap from exhaustion. It's horrible. And these are people that they come in and they look like they're in pretty good shape, but they exert all their energy at once because they're freaking out. They got that tunnel vision. They don't know what to do. And it leads them to an even worse position. You can't do that when you are in a life and death situation. When you're on the mats and just rolling around, it's for training, it's one thing. But if you're a police officer and you're on the side of the road rolling with someone, or if you're with your family and some crazy guy comes and attacks you, you can't be gassed out in 20 seconds and then just lay there and roll over and just die. That's your family's there. Or, as a police officer, someone could take your weapon. It's so important to conserve that energy. And how do you conserve that energy mentally and physically? By remaining calm during that chaos. So jiu-jitsu actually rewires your brain in a way, and it keeps you calm in these situations, and it makes you go to some of the things that you've learned and that to get out of these situations. So it's almost like slowing everything down. That's what I feel like. I tell people as they progress through the belts, everything slows down and you don't freak out. You just realize what situation you're in. You realize what position you're in, and you slowly start going back to your training to slowly and methodically work your way out of that situation, no matter how bad it might be. One of the most important things is controlling your breathing. I would always go into like a hyperventilation mode when I got into these, let me say, engagements on the road and on patrol. And it was not good. It was not good at all. And then I started to learn to control my breathing. And I learned this from one of the high-level operators I trained with. He was all about breathing and breath work. And it's actually a great book by Hicks and Gracie called Breathe, where he goes through the importance of breath work and breathing and lowering your heart rate before he would enter the ring to fight someone. So jiu-jitsu gives you great breath training because you have to, as you progress, start to control your breathing. You can't hyperventilate. You're going to slow your breathing down. You're going to calm everything down and bring everything into focus. It's one of the most critical things that jiu-jitsu teaches you in this controlling and being calm during the chaos. Even better is that when you get into a bad position, as you progress, you don't freak out. You could have someone take your back and start sinking in a choke. And when you're new, you freak out. But as you progress, you don't freak out. You just are calm, you're controlling your breathing, and you're working your way through that problem. Let me tell you, that is critical on the mats, off the mats, on the street, in your life, in your relationships. It doesn't matter. That skill set translates across everything you do in your world. It is invaluable. Now, a lot of people think of jiu-jitsu and police work as in, well, if someone's trying to fight with you or trying to steal your gun, you're going to know what to do. You're going to know how to restrain them and all that stuff. However, I got to say that when it comes to what you learn from jiu-jitsu during the, learning how to manage chaos and how to bring everything down and be calm, I think that has taught me more from the realm of actual conversations when people are getting angry and their mood is elevated and their emotions are going through the roof. You'll see people who are very good at bringing things down, calming things down. I would actually lower my voice and I would actually start to talk to people. The louder they got, I would just start to lower my voice and talk to them. And I would just slow down my movements. I wouldn't do crazy. I would just slow down my movements, slow down my voice. And you would see it had a calming effect on them. This was huge. This was verbal jiu-jitsu, but a lot of this translates from the mats right to real life. So when you are having maybe a disagreement with your partner or your spouse, it could be something that helps in that situation. When you're dealing with maybe out at work or your boss or whatever. On the road, that teaches you when you're dealing with that angry person on the side of the road that is looking to probably fight you, you can de-escalate using your words, that verbal jiu-jitsu. And then you are also lowering your heart rate and you're also conserving your energy, because if it does go hands-on, one, you're going to know what to do, so you're going to be calm. Two, it's not going to be a surprise because you've had those situations before on the mats where something is going wrong. You immediately are put in a bad position. It happens all the time where, I'm rolling with a black belt and next thing you know, they take me down and they're trying to sink in some kind of submission and you're like, wow, holy crap, that was fast. But you don't freak out and you just slowly work through it, and that calm and composure is critical. So like I said, this could be critical, of course, on the mats during jiu-jitsu, but critical on the side of the road as a police officer when you're dealing with someone who's maybe fighting you, trying to take your weapon, trying to harm you. It is just valuable all around. When it comes to civilians, well, we never know what we're going to run into in this crazy world. You could be sitting in a restaurant having dinner with your wife and your kids, and some crazy person could come in, or some crazy person who's eating could get upset or whatever. You don't know. And in those moments, one, you have to remain calm. You can't freak out. You got your family to protect, and you have to keep your heart rate down. You can't be elevated, and you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared for whatever happens next. If this crazy person comes and engages with you, you have to be ready. You have to be prepared. Or if this person is now harming someone else, and you need to jump into action. You're not the person, right? When you're in the mission ready mindset, you're not the person to break out your cell phone and start recording. You're the person who's going to jump into action. Hey, this person is harming an innocent individual. I'm going to jump into action. I'm going to remain calm. I'm going to subdue this person, and I'm going to hold them there until the police come, which are some great videos of people who know and train jiu-jitsu that have just done this same exact thing in public settings. And it's great. It's invaluable. And you could always tell because the person who is taking this person down and restraining them, they're not breathing heavy. They're just really calm, really relaxed. Actually, a guy I trained with and I took some private lessons with has a great video online where he restrains this guy who's going crazy. And that's it. He's got a body triangle on him and he's holding him and he's calm as could be. And this is a situation where most civilians, most men would freak out and probably gas out and probably get hurt. And this is a great example of how jiu-jitsu translates into keeping you calm and keeping you safe and potentially keeping you alive in the streets. One of the most valuable lessons I learned from one of the Navy SEALs I trained with came from a conversation where people were asking him about what was his best asset as far as, firearms training and tactical training and things like that. What was his best, asset and skill set? And he said, my ability to remain calm no matter what is happening around me. He actually said that's kind of a superpower because the overwhelming majority of people, when things start falling apart around them, they too fall apart. They too decompensate. And he said the person who can remain calm as if nothing crazy is going on, focus, don't get the tunnel vision, just see what's going on, assess, and they talk about this thing called the OODA loop, and I'm not going to get into that, but it's just remaining calm, like observing what's going on and then making a plan and executing that plan. And he said that power right there, the ability to do that, puts you ahead of 99% of people in the general population. So if you're a police officer or you're a civilian looking to protect your family, it doesn't matter. That ability to remain calm during that storm is your most valuable asset. It doesn't matter how good of a shooter you are, how good at jiu-jitsu you are. All that stuff is important, of course. However, the most important thing is to remain calm through the storm, through the chaos, no matter how bad the situation is, and you get to work and you move accordingly. I'll never forget one time when I was responding to a motor vehicle accident. It was a really bad motor vehicle accident on the interstate, and a couple of guys were on scene already, and they were newer guys. They were, younger officers, and I was more senior at that time. And I rolled up, I think I was the third car, and there was literally bodies in the road, and these guys were visually shaken and weren't sure what to do first and freaking out. And there were people who were stopped. There were people screaming in the cars that were still stuck in the cars, and I just remained calm. I just directed people on what to do, shut down the lane of traffic that needed to be shut down, diverted, called on the radio what we needed, and just remained calm. Now, that came from years of experience, but it is something that was critical in that moment. And these guys saw that. I remember one of them said to me, however many hours later when we met up, and he said, man, you were just so calm during that. And it was like chaos. There were cars all over the road, glass, metal, mangled. And I said, there's no benefit in any situation ever to freaking out, to losing your mind, to losing your shit. There's never been a situation in the history of man where freaking out helped. Being calm and just noticing, making a plan in your mind, and then executing that plan is always the better alternative. Listen, you guys have heard me say this before. If you're on the job as a police officer, training really shouldn't be optional. Training jiu-jitsu is so important. It's so valuable. It's so relevant. It could literally help save your life, and you're doing a job that could take your life any given moment. So why wouldn't you? And if you're a civilian, you're just a responsible civilian who's looking to protect their family and be a protector and be a guardian, there's no reason why you shouldn't go get on the mats and learn some of the basics. If anything, train to the point where you do have that calm and you do, start absorbing that feeling of, okay, I'm in a bad spot, but now I know what to do. I'm not freaking out. Even that alone could literally save your life. Guys, listen, if you're serious about protecting yourself and the people you love, start training, because strength fades and speed fades, but your ability to stay calm under pressure, that's what keeps you alive. If you're on the job and you train jiu-jitsu, drop a comment, share your experience, share with our community, because that's what we're doing here. We're all looking to share and grow together. Or even if you're not on the job and you do jiu-jitsu and some of those elements of training have helped and crossed over into your personal life, or with your spouse or your job or your boss, whatever, share, drop a comment, let people know, because this is what the community is about, to help everyone grow and get better. Thanks for watching. Stay mission ready.